Hello, this is Jennifer McGuire, and I'm honored to be a guest on the Simon Says Stamp YouTube channel. Today, I will be showing you how to create your own dancing die cuts. Yes, using supplies you likely already have, we will make the die cuts on our cards dance back and forth with a little bit of movement. This is something that you can do with a variety of die cuts or stamped and cut out images. I will show you 3 examples today. My first one features the new STAMPtember collab with Hero Arts. This is the completed card to show you where we are headed. We have a 5x7 card with these little animals who swing and dance back and forth to go along with this celebration music kind of themed card. Believe it or not, it's very easy to make these little critters dance. And then after we do this card, we'll create 2 holiday cards. So let's get started on this one. For this, as I mentioned, it features the new STAMPtember Hero Arts collab stamp set. This is one of those special stamp sets that's only available for a limited amount of time. And there are coordinating dies available if you're interested. Now, I don't have the coordinating dies to use today, so I will be fussy cutting these images out, but it's definitely worth it in the end. I just thought these little critters were so much fun, could be used to create like a holiday card with little like Christmas carols, or what I'm doing, a celebration card with just a fun music theme. I'm first creating that background that has the blue sky, the white clouds, and the green hills. Now for the green hills, I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Stitched Slopes and Hills dies. I like these because it has different slopes and hills, and it has faux stitching on them if you want to use. But you could use any kind of hillside border dies, or you could freehand cut some of these little hills. It really doesn't matter at all. I will end up making this panel that is the background to be a little less than a 5x7 card. So this blue background here is 6 3/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches. And I have these 2 medium green hills, and I'm going to make one hill for behind that that's a little bit darker green. Now I could glue these hills directly onto our blue background, but I thought it'd be fun to add some stamping to the green first. I have my MISTI stamping tool, and in it I am placing my Brutus Monroe stick and stamp mat. This is a sticky mat that will hold my cutout pieces in place as we stamp on them. I'm placing 2 of my hills onto that sticky mat. I'll have to do the 3rd one separate because there's not enough room. And I will place into my MISTI stamping tool right on top of this, the Hero Arts Meadow floor stamp. This is a great cling stamp. It will be on my favorites list this year for sure. And I'll stamp this with a slightly darker color ink than the green cardstock I'm using. So this is Hero Arts Core Ink in the Fresh Lawn color. Now, it didn't stamp very dark at first because it's really quite close to the green color of my cardstock. So I'll stamp it a few times to make it darker. I will then fold back my sticky mat to release those hills, and then I'll place the other one on top of it and stamp on that. So I'm doing just some tone-on-tone stamping. I don't want this to be too distracting over everything else on the card, so tone-on-tone seemed best. You could clear heat emboss this image, and that would work great too. And look how cute that image is. Great for a background, but here it was a great way to kind of step up those little hills. Now I will glue these hills on to my background. Again, that blue piece is 4 3/4 inches by 6 3/4 inches, which is slightly smaller than a 5x7 card. You could definitely make this card any size you want. I'm gluing those hills together, and then I will glue them on the bottom of that blue panel. So by doing 2 shades of green, it gives that look of dimension. Next, let's create those clouds in the background. I love these clouds because they're nice and fluffy and fill a lot of that background space. This is the Hero Arts Cloudy Skies die set. A favorite of mine, I use it often. It has 2 fluffy cloud border dies that have a lot more dimension to them than most cloud border dies. Then there are the circles to create a sun or a moon. This die set also creates little bird dies. I don't have those on the screen here. I actually use those bird dies so much that I have them stuck on a magnet inside my cabinet doors. I'll put an image of the entire die set up here on the screen so you can see what is included. But look how that creates a really big, fluffy white cloud that fills a lot of the background. I created two, one to go to the back left and one to go to the back right. And I will glue that on the background so that they're peeking out from those green hills. By the way, that glue tool that I'm using is the My Sweet Petunia Precision Glue Press. And in the bottle, I have my Gina K Connect liquid adhesive. This is just a quick way to add adhesive to your project. So I've glued the clouds to my background, but I'm not going to glue the hills down just yet, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Next, I need to figure out where I want each of my critters to be placed. Because I haven't colored my little critters yet, I just quickly stamp them on scrap paper and quickly cut them out. I'm just kind of planning the position. I'm waiting to do my coloring last so I can figure out what colors to use and so on. But right now I just want to kind of plan out where the critters will be. I have them laying on my background where I think I want them to be. Next, I have a pencil. You could use a pen, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to put a dot on my background right behind the center of each of these critters. So I just kind of put my pencil kind of hovering over it, then remove the critter, put a little dot behind them. This doesn't have to be perfect. Just put a dot in the area where you think you want the center of your critter to be. This will help you know where to put the mechanism that'll allow them to dance. All right, so I'm going to remove the hills and put them aside. And you can see my 4 pencil dots there. Next, I found a small circle die. This is about a 1/4 inch circle die. If you have a circle stacking die set that has a bunch of different size circles, usually it includes the smallest one about this size. Or you can use a hole punch. But I'm putting a hole right at each of those pencil dots. This hole will allow us to create that swinging or dancing mechanism. And this is why I haven't yet glued my hills down. I didn't want to put that many layers of cardstock through my die cut machine. So now that I have the holes cut, I can glue the hills on just below it. And there we have our background with the holes for the little swinging mechanism. And you can see how our die cuts, our little critters, will cover up those little holes. So off screen, I have stamped and colored these little critters, and I don't have the coordinating dies, so I fussy cut them. You could definitely use the coordinating dies for this process. It would save you a lot of time. But I didn't do any fancy coloring, just did some basic coloring and fussy cut them. At this point, I can't remember which order I had these critters in. I forgot to take a picture with my phone when I planned it out. I encourage you to do that when you plan out your card and then go to create it. I ended up figuring out okay. Did a little different order than I originally intended, but that's okay. Next, you will need 4 pennies. If you don't feel comfortable using pennies, I totally understand. You could instead use little washers for this. You just need something that's flat with a little bit of weight to it. Pennies work great. Next, I'm putting a piece of double-sided tape on the back of one of the pennies. I will remove the release paper from that tape and then place the end of a cardstock strip. Now this is just a scrap strip of cardstock. Mine is white. It's about 1/4 inch wide. Anything would really work. And so you can see how the penny is glued to the end of that strip. We'll trim that strip down later on, but for now it's about 4 inches long. And I will do the same for the other 4 pennies. I will put double-sided tape, something strong, Lawn Fawn is my favorite, on the back of each of the pennies. Then onto that tape, I will put the end of a longer white cardstock strip. Again, use whatever scraps you have. I do recommend something heavyweight for that long strip. You could also use a piece of acetate that's maybe from some packaging, something recycled would work well. So there you have the 4 strips with a penny glued to the bottom of each. From now on, I'll refer to these as the pendulum. All right, let's start with that bear there. It's the second hole from the left. I'll take one of the pendulums and hold it behind that second hole. So I've got it held there. Now I'm going to flip it over, and I want the penny to be about 3/4 inch from the bottom of that background. I'm going to hold it there and then put a pencil dot right there through the circle. All right, so you can see it's about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch from the bottom there. Now I can put a foam circle on that pencil dot on our pendulum and cut some of that extra off the top end. You could use a square foam dot here. That would work too. You don't have to use circles. Square would work fine. So there you can see the penny is about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch from the bottom of the background. And then we have the foam dot on the front. Okay, so let's do that again. Let's do that third hole there. I'll hold it there so the penny's about 1/2 inch from the bottom. Then I'll put a pencil dot there onto the white strip. I'll put a foam circle right there on that pencil dot and cut the extra of that scrap off. I will continue to do this for the other 2 holes. So again, I mentioned that I'm using circle foam dots for this. I really like that circle shape. However, you could definitely use squares. On the bottom left of my screen there, you can see some square ones. Those work well too. It may not seem that the square will work well, but it does. It'll still swing nicely. You just want to make sure that whatever foam square or circle you're using, that it's slightly smaller than the die cut hole that you created. If you only have like a roll of foam tape, you could even cut a small square from that, just as long as that small square is smaller than the hole you die cut on your background. Okay, so we have created 4 pendulums. Now let me flip this over to the back side and tape all of our pendulums in place so that the foam circle is going through the hole on the front and the penny is down towards the bottom. So these white strips are up and down nicely, and we're just taping them temporarily in place. So there you can see all the foam circles are inside of those die cut holes. Now I can remove the release paper and add a critter on top. So I'm going to put the little guy here, make sure he's kind of straight because I have the pendulum in the straight position. Here I'll put the little bear. Really doesn't have to be perfect. These are going to move so much that they don't have to be in the perfect position. Now the little squirrel here, I made him a little bit lower. I wanted to just kind of change things up here, and I put this little guy even lower than that. So I just remove the release paper and press it on that foam circle. Now it's not going to move yet because I have that tape on the background. So now we can remove that temporary tape. And then when we flip this over and shake it side to side, these little critters will dance thanks to those little penny pendulums that we created on the back. Now before we finish this card off, I'm stamping "Let's Celebrate" on the background. And I'm also stamping some little music notes around our dancing critters. Now these images are from the same STAMPtember stamp set from Simon Says Stamp and Hero Arts. So I use that for the critters, the sentiments, and the music notes. Now let's put this background onto our note card. But first I'm putting some foam squares in between our little pendulums, just so they don't swing into each other. Now I did end up testing this off screen and you really don't need these, but at this point in the video I put them in just to be sure. These are 2 foam squares each stacked together, so they're nice and thick. Now this next step you do need to do. I have foam tape that I'm doubling up. My foam tape is pretty thin and I want this to be thicker than a penny. That way the pennies will be able to move inside. So I folded foam tape over so it's double thick. And here I'm just cutting it so it's not as wide. It really just depends on the foam tape you have. If it's narrow and very thick, you only need 1 layer. All right, so I'm putting that doubled up foam tape along the bottom, and then I'll put the leftover thin strips along the side. Then I'll put 2 full strips across the top. Again, all the foam tape you see here is doubled up. Then I will take this and place on top of that a piece of white cardstock that's cut to the same size. So now everything is trapped in there. And you can see my little critters can dance back and forth because those pennies on the back side are allowed to swing back and forth. With any movement of the card, they start moving, so the recipient will definitely see it. Now next I wanted to add some flowers on my hill, so I used the Hero Arts Flowers in a Vase stamp set. I really like the style of this flower vase. There's a stamp set. There are coordinating stencils which allow you to color in those images, or you could use the stencil by itself. And there's a coordinating die. Now I fussy cut my flowers because I fussy cut the images, but you could definitely use the die. From this image, I only stamped and colored the small flowers and small leaves. And yes, I did fussy cut those tiny little flowers. Did it take me a bit of time? Yes. Am I happy I did it? Yes, it's totally up to you. If you want to do these final little touches, you could instead just stamp some little flowers on the hill, maybe add some flower-shaped sequins. Totally up to you. But I decided to stamp color and fussy cut the flowers and leaves just to add that pop of color to the hillsides. And honestly, it makes me very happy to take a stamp set and find another unique use for it, so I get more value out of my stamps. So that flower vase stamp set has a completely different style than this card, right? But I was able to use it to add little accents to this one, just stretching my supplies. Okay, so now I'll put glue on the back of this panel and add it to a 5x7 white note card. Now I like to do little finishing touches to my little critter images, so I'm using a glitter pen to add some glitter to some of the little instruments that our critters have. And I'm also using a black glaze pen to add like dark black shine and dimension to our critters' noses. So here is the final card, and it freely shakes back and forth. I have a 5x7 envelope, and as soon as you take it out, the recipient will see those critters move. So it's very obvious that you can shake it. But you also could put a note about shaking it on the inside of the card. So there's a closer look at that movement and those little hills with the flowers stamped on it and our fun little critters. Between those fun stamped images and that movement, we have a fun celebration card. I have 2 more cards for you, and I'm going to create them both at once since they're very similar. In this case, the 2 main elements, that frame swings back and forth as you shake the card. This can be done with any stamps and dies you have. I'm using the Hero Arts Peeking Reindeers die set and the Peeking Snowman die set. They have a few die sets like this, and they would all work great for this technique. I'm also using the Hero Arts wood frame dies. This is an older set, but I use it a lot. Okay, let's start with the reindeer. What I like about these peeking die sets from Hero Arts is you can see the die is small there, the reindeer die. So it's got a great price point. What you do is you can cut it from a variety of colors of cardstock and then cut apart the different pieces and layer them together. So you can turn this into a layering die set, but it's not a ton of dies, so the price point is good. Or you could just cut it from white cardstock and use markers or ink to color the different areas. My little reindeer will go inside of a frame, and in the background of the frame, I wanted a piece of pool cardstock with stamping on it. I have my MISTI stamping tool along with the sticky mat and the Hero Arts Jingle Bell script stamp. I am placing my cardstock onto the stamp, closing my MISTI stamping tool upside down. The sticky mat will grab that cardstock and hold it in place so I know my stamping will be straight. I'm stamping on top of that pool cardstock with Paradise ink, and now we have this fun script image on it. Just a little tone-on-tone stamping. I've used that background before. It's a favorite of mine. Then I used that frame die set that I showed you earlier and cut it from white cardstock, and I'm gluing it onto the blue piece so we have a white wood grain frame. Then we have our little reindeer that I've already assembled off screen, and I'll glue that into the frame so it looks like he's peeking out from it. Now you could make this reindeer kind of peek out from the edge of a card or from a little tree. Here I just having it peek out of that frame. I wanted to stamp a sentiment inside of that frame, so I'm using the Hero Arts Winter Foliage stamp and die set. Now these are sold together. Fantastic sentiments and fantastic dies that can be used for so many different cards. So I'll use a sentiment from the stamp set and then also the holly die from the die set. And the holly will go on the little antlers of the reindeer, and I'm stamping Happy Holidays into the frame. I'm stamping Holidays first, then I will line up Happy right above that and stamp it. I could have stamped both at once, but there would be a little bit of a gap between the words, and I like them stamped close together. So stamping them separately gives better results. Now that I have that reindeer frame almost done, let's do the snowman frame too, and then we'll turn them both into dancing cards. So I have my little snowman here. I created him in the same way, die cut him from a couple different colors of cardstock and glued them together. I also stamped the background of my frame. This time I made my frame out of dark gray cardstock, and then I'll add my little snowman in place. So now we have 2 frames, one with our layered reindeer and one with the layered snowman. Now let's do that fun swinging or dancing mechanism. I have a piece of white cardstock here that is 4 by 5¼ inches. And towards the top center, I'm using that same small circle die to cut a little hole. Then around the edges of this, I'm putting foam tape. Once again, this foam tape is 2 layers thick, so it's thicker than a penny. Then I have a penny here. I'm putting double-sided tape on the back of it. I will put that onto the end of a cardstock strip. Again, it really doesn't matter how wide it is. Whatever you have should work as long as it's wider than that hole you die cut in the background. So I'll put the end of it onto that tape, trim that little extra off there because I put it up a little too high, and then I'll hold it back there. So I'll just hold it there so it's not too close to that bottom foam tape. And I'm going to put a little mark on the front hand side through that circle. So I'll just put a little mark there. And onto that mark, I will put a foam square. This is a circle foam. Square would also work. Cut off the extra that's above that. I'll put the foam circle into the hole, so the penny's on the back. And then I'll put a piece of tape to tape that pendulum in place so that it's straight up and down. Then I'll flip it over, remove the release paper from that little foam circle, and center up our frame into the center of that background. Once I have it centered up, I can remove that temporary tape. That temporary tape is really helpful to make sure that everything stays straight. Then we can glue this onto a note card. So I'm going to tape it from the front to make sure it stays centered and my penny doesn't swing out as I'm adhering this down. And I'm putting it onto a 4¼ by 5½ inch top folded white note card. So I'll just place that onto there, remove that tape, and now that whole frame swings side to side, which I think is really fun. You could put a hidden sentiment under there, but it really doesn't swing out that much. Now here I have a pool colored background that I created in the same way. You've got the pendulum that's sitting in that hole. You've got foam tape all around it. This will be for the reindeer card. So I can place this onto a 4¼ by 5½ inch top folded white note card, then remove the release paper and place our reindeer frame onto it. Now at this point, I tried to swing it back and forth and it's not moving. I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized it was because I left that orange temporary tape on the inside. It's taping our pendulum in place. So this is a reminder, you want to remove that temporary tape before you glue it down. Just a reminder also that those who do YouTube videos on making cards make mistakes a lot. We all make those mistakes. All right, so now he swings back and forth. Okay, next let's decorate this. I created little holly leaves using the holly die that's in that Hero Arts Winter Foliage stamp and die set. And I added some red pearls for berries. And because I love texture, I added black gemstones for eyes and a red pom-pom for the nose. The little bell, that's done with gold cardstock. Here you can see how that frame swings freely back and forth, just demonstrating that this DIY dancing die cut technique can be done with big die cuts that are assembled like this one, or smaller ones like the critters on our last card. And here's a closer look at that reindeer. Even though that's a single die, look at how much layering I was easily able to do. I really appreciate that Hero Arts designs their dies like this because you can layer them if you want to. And let's look at the completed snowman card. It's very similar, but this time with the snowman and the word joy for a sentiment. I did again add the little green holly leaves and red berries, and you can see how the front swings back and forth freely. So I hope that this technique shows you that you can create those little penny pendulums to make any of your die cuts dance back and forth or swing back and forth. This is a great way to add some fun to your handmade cards and to make your handmade cards stand out against those store-bought ones. It's all about stretching our supplies and making them even better. I appreciate very much that you spent this time with me, and I hope you're feeling inspired.
I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, Be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.